What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast. We are now 4 weeks into the NFL season. Can you believe it? And once again, the primetime games have really come through. I think the Raiders-Chargers game just ended about an hour ago now. We're recording this late on a Monday night because we wanted to wait until after that AFC West battle to do this Week 4 recap episode. And man, the Chargers almost chargered, but then they became the new version of the Chargers. So it's been a very intriguing opening to the season, at least from that standpoint. But before we get into all this week's action, I want to welcome my wonderful co-host, EJ Snyder. Buddy, how you doing, and what are you drinking?
I'm good. It's late, but we had a good slate of games this weekend. We had a great Monday night game. You and I talked about it earlier today. Really, we gotta wait until that game's over. It's gonna be a good game, and I think everybody felt that, and it turned out that way. So that was really impressive. Cool to see the new version of the Chargers. But I'm good. A little on the sleepy side, but that doesn't mean I'm drinking coffee tonight. I am drinking pale ale from Bowie Beers down in Astoria, Oregon. I've had several offerings from them, but not their pale, so I'm excited to try it. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it. We got a lot to talk about. It was an exciting week for us, but what are you drinking?
So if you see this dark glass of death right here, see if I can get the camera to focus on it. There we go. This is Balcones Brimstone, which is one of the meanest whiskeys I think you can put in your body. Not necessarily like the highest proof. Well, it's 53%. What am I kidding? It's pretty high proof. But also just it's aggressive. It's supposed to be aggressive. They call it Brimstone for a reason. It's like you're drinking liquefied smoked barbecue that's just there to tear up your insides. And, you know, watching the Bills beat the Texans 40 to nothing this weekend, I felt like I didn't deserve happiness. So I broke out the meanest whiskey I could possibly find to punish myself and get through this show, which, by the way, for people watching, listening at home, we are not going to talk about that Bills-Texans game because my sanity cannot take it. I've said my piece on the Texans as an organization right now, and I'm going to stick with that because if I try to talk about that game, I'm going to say some shit that I regret. So I'm looking after myself, and I'm just going to drink this Balcones Brimstone, try to drown out the pain. But before we get into these games, I do want to make a quick announcement, little news and notes type thing. Bootleg is now on Patreon. You guys have been asking for it for a long time. You know, they wanted to know how you could support the show beyond just watching and listening and chatting with us. We are now on Patreon. I know it's been a long time coming, but we're really happy you guys stuck it out with us. We cannot thank you all who have already contributed. And for everybody who's about to contribute or contribute in the future, again, you guys are amazing. We could not do this without you.
Yeah, it's a big deal for us. Again, we appreciate your patience. We know it took a while. We wanted to do it right. We wanted to set up some good tiers for everybody out there. And one of the coolest things about being a Patreon supporter of Bootleg is that you get a nice chunk of change off Bootleg gear. So you can go to the store and get yourself one of these or Brett's favorite hat. Hoodies are great this time of year. It's starting to get chilly. So even at the $5 a month level, you're going to get $10 off a single purchase. At the Ring of Honor level, which is $20 a month, you're going to get $25 off a single purchase. So that's more than half the hoodie right there. And basically a free shirt. So go check it out. Grab some gear. Even if you're not going to become a Patreon supporter, head over to bootlegfootballpodcast.com. You'll check out all the fine merch there. We have our glasses and mugs. Again, you can look just like Brett. You put on that hoodie, that hat, nobody's going to know it's not him. And especially you pull the hood up, like walk down the strip in Vegas, people are going to be like getting autographs. It's going to be great. But thanks so much for everybody that has asked about Patreon, put forward an interest in supporting what we do. You can support us from anywhere in the world with just a few clicks and help create more of this content that you all love so much. So can't thank you enough. We're looking forward to it. And yeah, we're going to get into our 3 up, 3 down, 3 interesting for the week.
Yeah, 3 up, number 1. Again, these are, games that we find enjoyable to watch for one reason or another, our favorite games of the week. This was also on our watch list from last week, and it definitely, I think it paid off. Maybe not for Rams fans watching, but I think for me and EJ, it paid off to watch it because it kind of solidified some things in terms of how we look at not just the NFC West, but also the NFC as a whole, and that is Cardinals, Rams. What very high level takeaway before we kind of get into the nitty gritty and what happened in this game and key plays and stuff. What I found interesting is when I watched it back a second time, probably like an hour before I watched the Chargers Raiders game, when I watched back a second time, I realized the Rams weren't that far away from making this a game. There was maybe 3 or 4 plays, a couple key turnovers, not converting on the 4th and goal, a couple inexplicable play calls that I really didn't understand. But again, it was like 3 to 5 plays in this game that made the difference between them getting blown out by like 3 or 4 scores and them potentially being pretty close in this one. I think when they meet again, this is going to be a lot closer of a game and potentially go even the other way. Because again, I did not really see like a talent disparity here. It was just a few key plays that really broke this thing open.
Yeah, it was odd knowing how it ended, knowing what the score was. I watched it, strangely enough, almost the exact same time you did, about an hour before the Monday night game. And the thing that surprised me was the Rams opened looking like the Rams. They were ripping off yardage. They were making big holes for their running game. Stafford was dialed in for the first drive or two. And I thought, how in the hell did this happen? Like, how did they end up getting blown out? They looked pretty sharp. Cardinals also looked really sharp, but they continued to make plays. And the Rams hit that period, I would say, really for about mid-second quarter. And it feels to me very much like when Kyler got that long 3rd down conversion, which he had no business getting. Only Kyler Murray gets that conversion. You can watch it back 10 times and think, nope, should have got stopped short of the marker on all 10 of those. But somehow he Kylers it up, and that really took the gas out of the Rams. And after that, they misfired a lot, and the Cardinals just kept on making plays. And they made plays on both sides of the ball. They kept their foot on the gas, and they just made more plays. Like you said, talent on both sides. Cards kept executing. Rams started that way and then fell off.
And it was a 3rd and 16 scramble. That's the play you're referencing where, the Rams were about to limit the damage for their offense kind of sputtering a little bit. Cardinals were kind of getting down in the red area. And again, 3rd and 16, they're backed up. They're going to hold them to a field goal. Kyler gets loose. I mean, it's one of those where it's like the rush angles are there, but he's such a unique athlete where even if your rushers have depth and width, he just needs to give you one little shake inside. And if you kind of step in the bucket, he's gone again. And there was a 54, I think it was, had an angle on him until he didn't. So it's like you're making 2 guys miss in space and then converting 3rd and 16 with your legs. They cap off that drive with the touchdown. Like that was a really big turning point because it went from probably going to be like a 17-10 lead, and the Rams are still in this thing, to 21-10 lead, like 1 score versus 2 score. It kind of started to unravel from there. And like, believe it or not, the Cardinals, 13 3rd down attempts. They converted 8 of them, like 61% on 3rd down. That's ridiculous. And it was Kyler with his legs, Kyler with his arm. Somehow AJ Green turned into 2014 AJ Green for a week, and they couldn't handle him. Had a beautiful touchdown when they went out to empty, and he kind of hit the corner to the boundary on attack and slip release. So he kind of nodded outside and then just cut up field and did AJ Green things. Like, it's not even like he got over the top of the corner. It's just Kyler left the ball perfectly inside of him. And, when AJ's got leverage on you, there's not much you can do. It really started to spiral out of control. And one play that I want to bring up that I think also made a huge difference, that Byron Murphy interception. He's now got 3 picks in 4 games. I want to put in context how crazy this was. If I have time, I'll throw up some all 22 of this play as I'm talking about it. If you're watching the YouTube video or version of this show, you'll see it. This was a quarters beater. Like they faked a through route that turned into a deep 7 to kind of get the safety to bite down. And then it kind of froze the corner so he couldn't quite zone off and get to the post. Like this was a quarters coverage beater, and the Cardinals were in quarters coverage. It's a deep post. He's over the top from outside leverage, like 100% dead to rights. Stafford knew it. He let that ball go, got it all the way down to like the 15-yard line at the numbers. And Byron Murphy somehow just got on his horse and tracked this ball down, made up ground, undercut it for a pick. One of the most incredible interceptions of this entire season. Probably the best play that Byron Murphy's ever played in his life. Like that was nuts. And all of a sudden, when I first saw that pick, I was like, ooh, that's going to probably flip this game, because if you're taking away the Rams' ability to hit that deep shot on a schemed up deep post, which is what they've been doing all season long, if you take that away, you just cut out the jugular for that entire offense. And they just could not get going without that deep ball.
Yeah. And they not only did they do that, but they flipped it around and started gutting the Rams defense on explosive pass plays, which is exactly what that defense is built to stop, right? So you take away the Rams' ability to go deep on their bread and butter, and you start cutting into them deep on pass plays that they're designed to shut down, and you do it with regularity, and that was enough. But Murphy on that pick, not only does he cover a ton of ground from weird leverage, he baited Stafford into throwing it. He knew he was going to be there. He waited. He could have been in front earlier and just shut it down so that Stafford wouldn't trigger it. He hung out on the back shoulder. And then as soon as Stafford let it go, because it had to travel a ways in the air, cut in front, pure hands pick, gorgeous play, really nice mentally and physically. But the Cardinals' difference in this game was not all their household names. I mean, Kyler, yes. But Max Williams had the best game I think I've ever seen him play as a pro. I was a big Max Williams supporter when he got drafted, had a bunch of issues when he got to the pros, never really developed, was signed for cheap to go to Arizona, and made a ton of plays in this game. Chase Edmonds, who, if you're a Cardinals fan, you know Chase Edmonds. He's a really talented back. He's the reason they didn't go out and sign a big free agency back, because they said, no, Chase Edmonds is going to support Cliff Kingsbury's running game and passing game the way we want him to. But if you're not a Cardinals fan, you might not know about Chase Edmonds, the ghost of AJ Green you talked about, right? He's been a shell of himself for a year and a half. He's back. Byron Murphy, Jalen Thompson drew a couple penalties in this game, but played aggressive throughout. And I just have to say, like, Byron Murphy and Jalen Thompson, a Husky and a Cougar working together in the backfield. What's the world coming to? But Jalen Thompson made a bunch of plays in this game and laid the lumber, made the Rams receivers start to know where he was, because when they went across, he was going to make them pay. And these are not guys that typically power the Cardinals' success. And they made plays on the offensive side of the ball. They made plays on the defensive side of the ball. The defensive line was stout early in the game, bottling up the run. They gave up a few. Darrell Henderson looked pretty good running this game. But they got contributions on both sides of the ball, and they didn't ever let off. And that's why it turned into this lopsided score.
And, you know, it wasn't just that too. It was also on the other side, the Rams missing opportunities. Like the Cardinals were capitalizing on opportunities. The Rams were missing them. Like they had a seam ball to Kupp on like a 3rd and 4 high red zone. They had it dead to rights. Like Kupp,
I had to watch that 3 times
just to see what went wrong.
I was like, and it was on the TV angle. It actually hit like a yard to the right. Stafford got pressure and he never really got it to Kupp. I thought, man, did that bounce off Kupp's hands? And I went back, watched it, and it was just because of the TV angle, not the all 22, but it was like he was open, and Kupp doesn't typically let those go. And he dropped a couple this game. He didn't drop that one. It was nowhere near him, but there were a couple other ones that hit him, and you're so used to him being Velcro.
Yeah, I mean, he caught the 3rd and 16 against 2-man where he got absolutely lit up by the safety, but then there was a couple others where it's like, that's the one you complete, but not 3rd and 4 and a wide open seam ball. Like, again, I think it was more miscommunication than anything, because he kind of took it vertical away from the post safety, and Stafford kind of left it a little bit inside. And Like he beat the nickel so bad, which I actually think ironically was Byron Murphy on that play. He beat him so bad that he just took it straight vertical. And Stafford's used to like, oh, well, there's going to be a guy on your outside leverage on the hip. I should leave it inside. It didn't connect. And then, they tried kicking a field goal and that missed. So all of a sudden they go from getting potentially 7 to getting nothing. And again, later in like a not quite garbage time, but pretty close to garbage time drive, like it was like their last hope of desperation. They get down to the goal line, the sneak gets stuffed, they get a really good rub to Higbee, and that gets dropped. It's like it just nothing worked for them.
And he got tackled just short of that fourth or the third and short play. Like he got tackled
right before.
Before it looked like he scored, but his knee was down like the 6-inch line. And you're like, it's a 6-inch line, right? They got a good offensive line. That's points. Nope. And normally for the Rams, it is. And so many things through the middle portion of that game that normally work for the Rams seamlessly, just up in smoke.
And you know what happened on the ensuing Cardinals drive after they failed on 4th and goal from the 6-inch line? So they run the ball. It's 3rd and 7. They're just trying to get off their goal line. What do the Rams do? They make another mistake. They call this boneheaded too high shell. Both safeties are like 20 yards deep. It's a 5-man box. Kyler just looks around and goes, okay, inside zone read it is. 50-yard gain.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are they doing? Like, they're just trying to run the ball. Like, stack the box or at least get 6 in the box. Like, don't do 5-on-5 against a mobile quarterback. Like, are you suicidal? I don't know. I didn't really understand some of the calls the Rams were making in this game, at least defensively. Offensively, I felt like McVay was scheming stuff up. They just were not executing. But yeah, it was a weird game for the Rams and a great game for the Cardinals. I think in a vacuum, these teams are very evenly matched. The scoreboard just didn't show it. And I'm psyched to see the rematch because this game did not spell to me that the Rams are 20 points worse than the Cardinals. That's just kind of how it ended up. I do think these are very evenly matched teams that just any given Sunday, one of them can blow the other one out.
Yeah, I want to credit Cliff and the Cardinals, though. I don't want to make it seem like we're saying the Rams lost this game and the Cardinals were the beneficiaries. The Cardinals won this game flat out. Like Cliff and his coaches and his players, they won this game flat out. They kept their foot on the gas. They got contributions all the way across the board, offense and defense. They went up against what has been a very good Rams team and made them look crappy, right? And they've done it every week this year. They're undefeated. So, I've certainly given Cliff a lot of shit in the past for not being able to kind of put the results on the board consistently. He's a great schemer. He's a great play caller at certain times, but other times, again, the offense doesn't support the defense. Cardinals team is clicking right now. They beat everybody in front of them. They just beat what everybody is saying is a Super Bowl, not necessarily favorite, but a likely Super Bowl entrant this year handily. So want to give credit to Cliff and the Cardinals for a great first month of the season and for playing as good a football as anybody in the NFL right now.
And speaking of the NFC West, why don't we move on to 3-up number 2, which was the other side of the division. Seahawks at 49ers, maybe a little bit less offensively inclined, more of a defensive game. But I think it was partially because both offenses were really struggling in the first half. Like Russ was off. Like there's no bones about it. Russ was off. Like there's no other way for the Seahawks to go like negative yardage through a quarter and a half other than for Russell Wilson to just be having an off day. And then all of a sudden in typical Seahawks fashion, they rally off a bunch of points in a row, but it started off really slow for them. And on the Niners side of the ball, Jimmy G, like first drive, strained his calf, which not that I think it had that big of an impact in the Niners offense, because I think with Jimmy G in general, it's just not a very dynamic offense right now, but that certainly didn't help. And, protection wasn't super great, and fully healthy Jimmy G is not going to be super great under pressure as it is, let alone a hobbled one. The run game was solid, but again, not super dynamic. It just, nothing got going. It was like 7-7, 5 minutes to go in the first half. And it felt like, when you look at like all the statistics for the game, it felt like it should have been like 21-7, but it's just they could not get going on either side. It was almost frustrating to watch because like there's defensive games and then there's just messy defensive games. This qualified as a messy defensive game. And then all of a sudden, alluded to it before, Russell Wilson happened, and he just made some plays that honestly 5 guys in the world can make, and he's one of them. The touchdown where they sent a receiver in motion. It was on escort motion across, and the Niners, when they saw that, they just sent the nickel because they're like, look, we'll push the linebackers to push coverage that side. Nickel, that's your guy. You just go. And so they sent the nickel. They had 2 guys free on Russ. He just got out of it, spun, turned around, and the guy that was on escort motion just wheeled up, and the linebacker let him go for some reason. He threw a dart to the pylon for a touchdown. Like, that's a play that only he can make. And once that happened, then it was on. Then it became not just a messy, gross, quote unquote, defensive battle, and more of like okay, this is an actually interesting game to me. And from then on, I thought it was highly entertaining. But man, you had to kind of slug through those first quarter and a half of that game before you got to anything good.
Yeah, it was the NFL version of running in mud. Like, it just wasn't great, right? And you talk to horse racing aficionados, and like, you have to appreciate mudders, and it's a different day at the track, right? It's not pristine conditions and everything's working as it should. You have 2 very talented teams, and they're just not hitting on all cylinders. It's not that the defenses are great. They're good, but they're kind of cutting out their own opportunities. Like you said, the dynamism's not there. And what we're seeing in the modern NFL is you can have a good, solid run game. It's really not going to get you anywhere. You need some dynamism. You need some bigger plays. You need some broken holes and good reads where you can rip off 15, 18 yards a run. And, you know, that's an explosive run play. If you don't have those, if you're getting lots of 3 and 4 and 5 yard runs, that used to be really good. It doesn't really do anything for you anymore. And defenses don't fear it. They will let you have that all day because it grinds clock. It's not terribly threatening. And then Russ still has magic, right? That's my takeaway from this game, is when he turns it on, there's very little you can do about it. The coverage on that dart to the pylon to Brady Swain was like, the rush was good. We talk about rushes and coverage being linked, right? The rush was good, and the cover guys are right there. Like, they should have had him for a sack. So there's the good rush, and the coverage was still tight. It's not like they went, they're going to get him, I'll just let this guy go. And then he spins out and throws to a wide open guy. He throws it into like a 3-foot box at the pylon, and he's surrounded by defenders. It's just a Russell Wilson thing to do. And it's super frustrating for a defense because, like you said, you can play great coverage and there's 5 guys in the world that can beat you on that throw, and he's one of them. So yeah, once he turned it on, it got really interesting. But Seahawks, man, they just can't play regular games, right? That's Danny Kelly's great line. Seahawks never played a normal game in their life. And this was a very Seahawky game, right? Grindy and kind of gross. And then all of a sudden, woo! And they end up, coming away with it. And that just felt like it's such a Seattle game, right? You're kind of sitting through the first part going, oh, this is nasty. And then it pops off and you're like, of course it went really weird. That's just what the Seahawks do.
And, like you said, dynamism is the goal. It's the difference for an offense. Like Russell Wilson's dynamism with his feet and his arm, like that was the difference for them, is those few plays that he can make. When Trey Lance came in to start the third quarter because Jimmy was hurt, and there's been some talk of, okay, is he going to start next week or not? Jimmy, after the game, said he'll probably be out for a few weeks. Kyle Shanahan today said, he could start. So I'm still not entirely sure what the hell's going on there. But regardless, when Trey Lance came in the game, that dynamism you're talking about with the Seahawks offense, where everything could go wrong until all of a sudden it goes right. We saw a little bit of that with Trey Lance. And I'm not saying it was great all the time. There was a few balls that he threw that were not good at all. Like his first pass, hit George Kittle in the ankles, basically. There's a funny story. Trey Lance, after the game, went up to Kittle and said, hey, next time I throw that kind of ball to you, just kick it back to me. But, for every one of those not great passes, there was something that he did with his legs where he got out of pressure, He made a play that Jimmy is physically incapable of making. There was that 4th and 10 late in the game where, again, he stepped up, sidestepped, and then kind of escaped and converted on 4th and 10. He had a couple touchdown drives. There's a blown coverage with Debo, obviously, where it was like, anybody can make that throw. And you're right, but it's the other stuff. It's the plays that not anybody can make that are really convincing me that Trey Lance needs to start. Whether or not Jimmy is quote unquote healthy, Trey Lance needs to start because, again, he can do things that the other quarterbacks on this roster just can't. And, Kyle Shanahan said, oh, well, the offense, like we didn't have a game plan for Trey Lance this week. So make one.
I'm so
one. You have a unique athlete.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Chicago where they're like, well, we didn't plan on Justin Fields. Okay. So make a plan, like figure it out. Like you have zone read in the playbook, call it. You have bash in the playbook, call it. It's not like your players don't know how to execute it. You've practiced it before. Like draw it up on the dirt on the sideline if you need to. Like how many times have we seen the Ravens come up with entirely new plays in the middle of the game where they've told a story where it's like, hey, we didn't have this in, but we put it in mid-game because we saw we might, or, the Chiefs do the same thing. It's like, we didn't have this concept in there, went in at halftime because they showed us something. We put it in. Like, can you not adjust at all? You're Kyle Shanahan. Like, put something in that Trey Lance can take advantage of with his feet. I don't know. I just, the whole like, oh, we didn't create a game plan for him. It just bothered me because it's like, well, it's your job to make a game plan for him.
This is all eerily similar to the exact same conversation that's happening in the middle of the country in Chicago, right? Because Jimmy G and Andy Dalton aren't really two different guys. They play a little bit differently, but their similarities are the same, and they provide you a stable level of offense. And in Shanahan's offense, which, to a point is Nagy's offense, at least when it's run well. Like you're going for the short throw, you're looking for yak, you're trying to create the sort of modern version of the West Coast. And, Jimmy G can do that. And Andy Dalton can do that. What they can't do is what we saw, what you called out the traded, or what we saw Justin Fields do early in the first quarter to Mooney, which is stand on his old goal line, be protected and go, oh, I got this, and throw a 50-yard missile to Mooney online, in stride, away from the safety. And, every DC in the league is going to look at that throw and go, uh-oh, oh, crap, we can't play the same way. Like, they're not going to play. They're not going to call one defensive coverage for that or against that when Dalton's in the game. If Dalton hits one of those all season, he'll be lucky. Had basically no explosive plays in all the plays he's played for Chicago. Trey Lance had explosive plays when he came in for San Francisco. Justin Fields' explosive play rate was like 20%.
Yeah.
Like 4.
It's off yak, by the way.
This is the way the game is played now. You cannot expect offenses to sustain typically 10, 11, 12, 13 play drives, those 4 and 5 yard runs I was talking about, moving the chains 6 and 7 and 8 times when you go down the field. You're talking about an 8 or 9 play drive, and one of those plays is 35 yards, 40 yards, 52 yards, 55 yards. And then you're going to make the rest of the plays because you're not going to be out there long enough to make a mistake. You can hold it together for 8 or 9 plays, but if the defense holds you out there for 11 or 13 or 14 plays and you're picking up 3 or 4 or 5 at a crack, you're going to get a penalty. You're going to get a sack. You're going to get set back. You're not going to get any points. The numbers say if you do not have explosive plays, you are not going to get as many points. And if you don't have an explosive play in a drive, you're not likely to get any points. So having guys like Trey Lance and Justin Fields on the field is what you need to do. Are you going to have to deal with the rookie mistakes? Absolutely. We saw Justin make them. We saw Trey Lance make them, hitting people in the ankles. They're going to make the wrong decisions. Occasionally, they're going to make turnovers, but they're going to learn from that. And when they're out there, they're going to make those plays that Jimmy and Andy can't make. And it is incredibly frustrating for me to have both of these coaches say, if they're healthy, we're going with Jimmy and Andy. Right. And it's like, Do you not understand? And I know Kyle Shanahan understands. I'm not sure Nagy understands because he sort of is so stubborn against it, saying this element that will propel our offense to points, I'm going to keep it on the bench. And you're like, why? You don't, like you said, you don't have it in any of your other quarterbacks. It's not like, oh, well, Andy's going to be out there and he's going to rip off a couple of 25-yard runs as well. So we're kind of getting the same thing. You're not. And it frustrates me to no end to take that dynamism and put it on the bench because of, again, we didn't make a game plan. He's not ready. We know he's not ready. We know they're not ready. They're rookies. But you saw what Bill Lazor did for Justin as opposed to what Nagy didn't the week before. And that's a pretty effective game plan. Yeah, it's the Lions and it's going to look better because of that. But you saw the dynamism and balance. And I want Kyle to do the same thing for Trey, just like you do, because I think it's going to. That's the whole reason they went and got him, is because he's not their offense. And if you bench him, you're not getting it.
It's not to compare the entire rookie class all at once, but look at Zach Wilson. Yeah, he throws picks. He throws a lot of picks, but against the Titans specifically, there was a few throws in that game where, I mean, they were jaw-dropping. I mean, he's on the move. He's flicking his wrist. He's throwing it 55 yards down the field. They were insane. Like, Zach Wilson made some utterly insane throws this week. But you can't make those throws from the bench. And I know that he makes mistakes. He's thrown some god-awful picks. He came into the week tied for the lead in picks thrown. I think he might still have it because he threw another one. Although, to be fair, the one this week, it was Corey Davis, fell down. It wasn't really his fault. But again, it'll show up in the stat sheet at the end of the year. Just bad stuff tends to happen to Zach Wilson. But every once in a while, he rips off one of these throws that you're just like, that's why he went number 2.
Yeah,
that's what I want for San Francisco.
They upgraded to BYU Zach Wilson this week. The go deep one, the schoolyard go deep one, was every 7th grade Nerf football quarterback dream, right? He goes out, he sees his guy, and he's like, I'll get it. And then he steps up into pressure, and he doesn't throw that ball with great mechanics. Like, he's kind of upright, a little bit straight, and he goes, huh. And it goes 50 yards on a line to Corey. It's like, that's, again, we talk about Russell Wilson being one of 5 guys. Like, that particular throw, there's 6 or 7 guys in the league that can make that throw from that platform.
I've resisted doing the comparison, but again, from a physical talent ability, that throw, like, tell me you don't see Aaron Rodgers make that throw where, like, you barely even see the wrist move and the ball just flies. It's
it
rare.
Didn't look like, if you look at just the mechanics on that throw, which is where the camera's panned on the TV angle, you think why did he wave him deep? That ball's going to die at the 20, right? You can't go like this and get it 50
and it just
yards.
Kept going.
and it's a fairly flat ball. It is not a moonshot, and it just powers. That's the thing about Zach when he gets outside the pocket, that BYU version we saw on tape. He gets outside the pocket, he sees somebody go deep, throws from some god-awful angle, crosses body on the run. This was kind of a straight up, flick with, again, not great base, moving into pressure. Just a strange throw, but the ball just moves. When people talk about having a live arm or arm talent, like, that's what they're talking about, is somebody that can make a throw like that from a not great platform. The ball just keeps going, and you're like, it shouldn't, but it does.
And Trey Lance has that kind of arm too, which is why I want him on the field. Like, come on, Kyle. Like, if not now, when? Like, Jimmy G's quote unquote hurt. The offense wasn't working with him on the field. The only reason why you were even in the game against Green Bay is because you brought in Trey Lance on the goal line. And he got your first points that started to get you back into the game. You only played him like 5 snaps the entire season leading up to this game. And then he got thrown in the middle of it with no practice reps, apparently no consideration for even how to use him because you said the game plan wasn't for him. And he still was able to kind of put some points on the board for you, keep it close. like, if you're not going to start him now, you're just never going to start him. At least not this year. And I'm so frustrated because he needs to be on the field.
Yeah, I think the benefits outweigh the downside, and obviously Kyle doesn't think that, at least by what he's saying. We'll see what he does in action, and the same with Nagy. Nagy's saying, "Oh, Dalton's the starter if he's healthy." Yeah, let's listen to Nagy a little bit less and see what he does a little bit more. You hope that Trey comes out and puts up some good results. I think Trey's kind of right on that fence where he could go out and have some truly abysmal games because his mistakes are really rough. They're different than Zach Wilson's mistake, but they come in bunches like that, and he just doesn't look great. His highs are super high and his lows are really low. He could string together a couple of games that just really aren't great, where it makes it very difficult to go, okay, this is better than a midline consistency Jimmy G with less variance. But the Chicago one, it's like, if Justin has another game where he plays even half as well as he did against Detroit with a game plan that favors him, it's going to make it impossible. It's going to be the Justin Herbert thing from last year, where Justin Herbert, it didn't matter how good Tyrod Taylor was going to be. By the time Tyrod Taylor was healthy last year, you couldn't pull there was no discussion. It was like, look, man, we're really sorry about the lung thing. It's terribly bad luck, but look at what's happening. Like, nobody made that argument. And I think Justin Fields could probably press it to that point where it's just, there's no more argument. I'm not sure Trey can yet. I still would put him on the field. I still want those development reps. That's how he's going to learn. You are going to get the high plays, but you're also, I think, going to get a higher variance just because he had so much less starting experience than a guy like Justin in college. He just doesn't have so many reps under his belt. He has one full season in college. But man, it's still tantalizing. And we're not even talking about his running. I mean, he's a big dude. Like, he is a big dude when he takes off. He is a force as a runner. Zach Wilson can escape, but I would not call him a forceful runner.
No, I'm not running QB power with Zach Wilson, but I'm definitely running it with Trey Lance.
Yeah, a couple of times a game because the results are going to be really good. He's a very talented runner. So he does have, again, if you build that game plan, just like they built the game plan for Justin, that was very different than the week before. You build a very different game plan for him. I think you can limit some of that variance, and I hope that he just sort of nails it shut, just like you do. And they just can't take him off the field after 3 or 4 starts. That would be ideal. I don't think I'd lay folding money on that at this point, just because of the wishy-washy between. But man, do I want to see it, just like you do.
This week's episode is sponsored by Purple Mattress. Purple Mattress has been the most innovative sleep system on the market for over 15 years now, and it's all because of their own unique patented technology, the Purple Grid. The Purple Grid has over 1,800 open air channels to help keep you cool and comfortable as we kind of wind down with these hot summer nights and transition into fall. And also, unlike memory foam that remembers everything, the grid bounces back as you move and shift so that you never get that sort of I'm stuck kind of feeling like you do with memory foam. It's also highly flexible to relieve pressure on your body no matter your size and no matter how you prefer to sleep. It's a really awesome, innovative design, and once you try it out and you kind of see how it works for yourself, you'll really understand why so many people love it. So if you want to try it out for yourself, go to purple.com/bootleg10 and use promo code bootleg10, and for a limited time with that code, you'll get 10% off of any Purple mattress order of $200 or more. Again, that is purple.com/bootleg10, promo code bootleg10 for 10% off of any order of $200 or more. Terms and conditions, of course, apply. All right, game number 3 here in our 3-up segment. We specifically waited until after the Monday night game was over to record this week because we kind of figured that we thought this game would probably end up there, and that was Raiders versus Chargers. I won't say Raiders at Chargers because, if we're being honest, it's more of a home game for the Raiders than for the Chargers. The Raider Nation's very strong down here in Los Angeles, or rather in the Southern California area. So that was Justin Herbert's first real taste of what a quote-unquote home game against the Silver and Black actually looks like. But very entertaining game. I don't really think the final score maybe illustrates how close it was, particularly in the second half there. Like, The Raiders came storming back after going down 21-0. They made it 21-14. They had 14 unanswered points. And it really came down to like one drive where the Raiders stalled out that kind of put the nail in the coffin. Then the Chargers turned on the run game in the end, and Eckler finished it off. But it was it's kind of weird to say a 28-14 game was back and forth, but it really was back and forth. I thought it was an excellent illustration of two very good teams in the AFC West that are not going to be pushovers, and I think are every bit the challenger to the Chiefs that we hoped they were going to be preseason. You could throw the Broncos in there too. I mean, they're 3-1 as well. All four of these AFC West teams have not disappointed at all, and this was just a tremendous battle.
Yeah, when the Chargers went up, when they got that extra score before the half, it really felt like, okay, this is going to be their game. But the Raiders have been that second half team this year. They have made their living in the second half, and they didn't disappoint. They did it again. They fired it up, like you said, 14 unanswered. They got a couple of stuffs. They sort of blunted what had been that very potent Chargers offense. And, you know, their fans, I was going to say the home fans, felt like the home fans. The majority of fans in the stands fired up. They got loud. It started to feel like, oh, the worm is turning. The Raiders are going to take this. They're going to wash up over that first half Charger success, and they're going to make this game their own. It was really good to see the Chargers, in my opinion, bow up and go, nope, and get a stop, and then start grinding out the run game. You talked about Austin Eckler, and he was fantastic down the stretch. But it was that offensive line really reclaiming the line of scrimmage, because the Raiders came out in the beginning of the second half, and their defensive line started wreaking havoc. They have a very talented defensive line. We've seen it over the first 3 weeks. We got to see it in person week 1. And they said, nope, we're not going to let you do this anymore. And then the Chargers, like watching two wrestlers, right? Nope. Chargers reversal, back on top, sort of asserted their will, pressed the Raiders into the mat. Austin Eckler finished it off. That was just a really good response from Staley's team to say, nope, we're not just going to have you, we're going to take some punches, and then we're going to stand back up and we're going to punch back. We're going to finish games. It was really impressive by the Chargers. That has been the sort of nail in the coffin for the Chargers in how many seasons, right? They sprint out to big leads, either whether it's in the first half of the season or first half of games, and then down the stretch, they lose in what we've come to know as Chargers fashions. That was such a Chargers loss, is something we would have said in years. This game was setting up to be another one of those, right? And I'm sure if you're a Chargers fan, you were sitting at home going, oh no, I know how this ends. Don't do it to me. And instead, you got to see your team buckle up, say, nope, we're gonna go old fashioned here. We're gonna reclaim the line of scrimmage. We're gonna grind out some runs. We're gonna get some explosive runs towards the end, and really put this thing out of reach. And that is a very non-Chargers thing to do. That is a sort of changing of the guard win for them in that case. And I'd love to see them carry that forward under their new coaching staff, and sort of sweep away those old memories of all these super talented teams that sprinted out to leads and couldn't hold them.
I found two things really interesting that kind of, not just the fact that they closed this game out, and for a while we definitely did not think they were going to close this game out because we're so used to the Chargers not closing games out. But what kind of signaled to me that this was a new era of Chargers football was that Justin Herbert didn't really have his best game. There were a lot of deep shots that were missed, and I mean by not just inches but feet. Like he missed, on off the top of my head, 3 deep balls that really could have busted this game wide open. And it just felt like the Chargers early on in the second half just couldn't fully get control because of those missed shots that they've at times become a little bit dependent on. And we've talked about how explosive offenses tend to be more productive overall. Well, yeah, they're so used to getting those 50-yard shots, and they get into hurry up, and then Eckler starts pounding, and that's how they score, is they get the chunks and then they finish it. They couldn't do that in this game, so they had to lean on other things. They had to lean on their tight ends. They had to lean on Eckler. but they also had to lean on their defense. And there was a couple plays. One was a loss on a rep. It was Hunter Renfrow down in the red zone, one-on-one, and he kind of ran that quadruple move route that he's come to be known for, where it's like it's a stop, and then he's like faking a return outside, then he pivot. I don't even know what they call. They were saying it's a China route in the broadcast. It's not a China route. Like China route's different than that. Like it might start out that way, but there's still two moves on top of that sends
it's
him
like
back
it's
inside.
like the China special.
Yeah, it's a really hokey route that's they've run a lot down in the red zone, and Renfrow has a few different versions of it, and they've got a few touchdowns on it so far. Cooper Kupp got a touchdown on it last week as well against the Bucs, and so they hit that again for the score to try to get things rolling, made it 21-7. And so then we get into a crucial third down late in the game. This was after they hit a bomb to Ruggs against Quarters, where Ruggs just crossed Derwin James' face, and once he crosses your face, it's over because he runs 4-2-1 or whatever it is. So they get down there. It's third down. They really need this drive to keep going to have a shot to stay in this game because they're trying to even up the score and time's running out. And what do? They bracket Renfrow. They play one double jersey number, God's favorite coverage, where it's cover one, and you pick their biggest threat and you bracket him inside and out and say, you're not going to beat us. We'll take our chances with everybody else. It's third and Renfrow. They bracket Hunter. They play one double. They're leaving Darren Waller on an island. They're leaving Ruggs on an island. They're leaving everybody on an island except for Hunter Renfrow. Derek Carr is looking at Hunter. Hunter's bracketed. He kind of pulls up and goes, whoa, didn't expect that. Hunter's running an option route. I need him to be open. He's not open. Oh, crap. All of a sudden, pocket closes in, takes a sack, punt, drive over. And from there, the Chargers finish it off. Like that adjustment where they realized that whenever a play needs to be made, they're going to go to Hunter Renfrow, and they bracketed him instead of all the other weapons on the team. That won them the game. And that tells me this is a new Chargers team. They identify things that are hurting them and they fix them in the middle of a game so that they can win.
Yeah, Staley's adjustment, I tweeted it out when he did it, that I just called it a double mug because, yeah, they lined him up inside and out and were like, nope. And I was surprised how surprised Carr was at that. Everybody's talking about Derek Carr's maturation through the early season, his quick decision-making. Like, he saw the double coverage. You could see it from the sky cam angle. He saw the double coverage, and he, like, literally pulled the ball up to the middle of his chest and was like, oh! Like, that was his response to him being covered. Not, okay, I'm on to my next read, right? He just went, and he just stood there for about half a second, and then he got sacked. He fully expected that to be there, and Staley and staff said, nope, we're not giving you that. Like you said, take anything else on the table. And he didn't even look at anything else on the table because he was so shocked that option wasn't there. You know, if it was me drawing it up, I think I'd still run that route more for eye candy than anything else. You want to double it up? I'll go one-on-one to Waller. I'll run a middle fade or post to Waller. Like, I'll take my chances with Darren Waller because he's probably going to win a one-on-one coverage. But I was a little bit surprised by that, and it's great to see Staley going, nah, we're not going to give you the easy ones, right? You may get us on a couple of them, but it's not going to be, we're going to be in the second game of the series in the season, and you're going to be running the same stuff from the first quarter of the first game, and you're still getting it. Like, nope. Sorry, do not pass go, do not collect $200. And that's going to make this a very different Chargers team. Also want to call out Jerry Tillery, a guy that had been sort of just AWOL on the Chargers stat sheet for a long time, been getting pushed around and not having great games. He had a couple of big plays this game. He was active throughout the whole game. And the Chargers defense as a whole, they gave the Raiders protection fits. Like, early in the game, they had the Raiders protection solved. They knew where to bring pressure to get guys to guess wrong, and they were getting free rushers. And that's, again, when you see a defensive coordinator who can do that, who can create free rush pressure, even if they're not getting the sacks, if they're getting good pressures, it counts as much or more. And they were getting good pressure early on, which is part of the reason the Raiders couldn't score in the first half, is because they had their protection solved. The Raiders bucked up a little bit again, really in that third quarter, and started to get some of that dialed up. But again, the Chargers didn't stop iterating. They kept changed the back end coverage, ended up getting a crucial stop, and then grinding it out for the win. And that is not chargering. Chargering was a verb for a long time, and chargering is going to mean something very different if they keep playing like this.
We can't talk about this game, by the way, if I don't also give props to Hunter Renfrow for making one of the best plays you're going to see any phase, any position of the entire season. Yeah. I'll set the stage for you. Raiders defense bows up. They force a punt. Somehow the Raiders only end up with 10 guys on the field on a punt return. And the Chargers have an automatic check where if one of the gunners isn't covered, they just kind of look at each other and say, "Hey, buddy, throw it to me." And the punter has full authority to just take the ball, throw it to the uncovered gunner. Hunter Renfro's out there as a returner, and he's doing his count and everything like that. And he's like 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait a minute.
7, 8, 9, 10 open.
Where's your guy? And so Hunter's like, I'm going to creep down here because I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to happen. And he's very suspicious that like something like that they have a check for a throw here. And he kind of is like floating in between. And as soon as the punter like just raises the ball, he's like, "I'm driving." And he looks like a DB, like doing a T-step and driving on this thing and breaking up the throw just short of the sticks. Like even if it was caught, it would have been short of the sticks. And he makes a beautiful form tackle. Like if you would swear that he plays safety. That's how beautiful this tackle in PBU was. And it was just such a heads up play for him to look at this guy and realize, wait a minute, we're messed up here. We don't have a dude over there. This doesn't smell right. And for him to just drive on that and just the instincts it takes to drive on that, let alone finish the play. Shout out to Hunter Renfrow. I mean, that, like, I know they lost, but if they won that game, that would have been one of the plays that you would highlight to say that's why they won.
Feels like he was like rooming with Tanner Muse or something, right? A couple of Clemson guys hanging out and like, "Hey, Tanner, how would you play that?" And Tanner was like, "Oh, you do this." And I know Tanner's not a Raider anymore. I get that. But like, it looked like he'd been hanging out in the defensive backs meeting room, because that was the kind of, click and close trigger and shot that he laid on. It was just short of the sticks. Dislodges the ball. Like, there was a lot of people popping up on Twitter saying he tackles better than, half the safeties in the NFL. And they're not wrong. I kind of want to replay that hit for Eddie Jackson, who said, "Oh man, everybody can tackle, but turnovers is what you want." I'm like, "Hey, Eddie, he tackled and he got the turnover."
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, do that. So, no, it was a super impressive play, made all the more impressive by the situation, the heads up nature of it, the sort of instant trigger, the tackle, the combination. It's just a fantastic play. One of the top plays in the NFL this year, just because of everything all put together. Tremendous stuff. So lots of fun there.
So overall, great showing by the Chargers. Admirable showing by the Raiders, even though they lost by 2 possessions. I am eagerly awaiting the rematch because, not going to lie, I feel like it could very easily go the other way. Just like our first game in 3-up. I think that this absolutely could go the other way next time they play in Vegas. Let's get to 3 down now. These are 3 teams, players, coaches, what have you, that did not have a great week 4. And I feel like, yes, the Dolphins are in a worse spot than before because of the Tua injury, but I also acknowledge that I vastly underestimated how terrible their offensive line was going to be. And as much as I love their defense, as much as I love Flores, as much as I think Tua, when he gets back, can be a very effective quarterback for them, like the injuries and the offensive line futility, like I just don't see the Dolphins crawling out of this hole. Like I don't expect them to start off any better than 1-4. And once you're 1-4 in that division behind Buffalo, the Patriots are looking good. Like even the Jets have shown some flashes of getting better. Like I don't know, man. I don't think they can get out of this hole. And I kind of almost feel like their season's dead on arrival, which is tragic to me because they're such a talented team, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, this is a talented team. It's a talented organization. We both like Flores. Chris Gears put together a very good roster. There's, this was their year. Like the last couple of years have been building towards this year. You got your quarterback in place. You got your high pick that you can spend on a playmaker. You go get Waddle. Like you got a bunch of pieces on defense. We saw that defense get creative and come in waves last year and play people really tough. The offense wasn't quite up to snuff. It felt like they were a couple of moves away. So that puts them squarely at this season. And they come out of the gate 1-3. Tua is hurt. The offensive line's playing terrible. This is a very talented team with not very many answers. Buffalo is set to liquefy right now. They're just mashing people off the field. The Patriots are playing tough and are going to be a tough out. That's always the case with Belichick. And he, again, got to reload, spent $1 billion in free agency. And, that team is coming together. Is it a guaranteed win? No, but is it, I would say just over 500 team at least. Yeah. And that puts them kind of right above the Dolphins. Means you're the third team in your division if you think you could beat the Jets, which isn't, like you said, a guaranteed thing. I think probably they would on a neutral field today, but I'm not sure, and I wouldn't bet on it. So that puts you in a hole to start if you're 1-3. Like you said, if you go to 1-4 and you're the third team in your division and winning your division is the sort of easiest key to get out, I don't see him doing it this year. It would take, I'm not going to say a miracle because it's just short of that, but they would have to have a ridiculously serious turnaround, and they would definitely have to get more production out of that offensive line. And I just don't feel confident about that. The deck feels very stacked against Miami, and that's not at all the way we felt a month ago. And that is, you use the word tragic. It's really unfortunate. There were a lot of expectations, and expectations are heavy to carry in the NFL. It's not easy to win on any Sunday. And the Dolphins have sort of dug their own pit here, and they're going to have to work really hard and get a little bit lucky if they're going to get out of it this season.
To put in context, statistically, how bad their offensive line has been, by the way, I mean, it would be hard for any quarterback to succeed, let alone a backup like Jacoby Brissett. They're 26th in adjusted line yards generated on the ground, meaning like average number of yards per carry that your offensive line is reasonably helping with. It's not just, the back creating everything by themselves. They're 31st in short yardage success rate. So any carry like 3rd and 2, goal line, 4th and 2, any of those kind of carries or shorter, 31st in conversion success rate. They are bottom 10 in adjusted sack rate allowed, and they're tied for 3rd in total number of sacks allowed at 10. Like it's bad. It's really bad. And what's disappointing to me is they've invested a lot of resources in guys that we liked coming out in the draft. Like I liked Eichenberg, like Austin Jackson. He was very athletic. I understand he was super raw, super young, but I saw the athletic upside, but he just has not developed. The interior's been collapsing. Like it's just bad. Like there's not even just a weak point. It's a weak everything. And, there's only so much that a quarterback and skill position players can do when each play is lasting 3/4 of a second, and anything longer than that's getting blown up.
Yeah, and organizationally, this is where you see the pieces. The plan was to fit them together a certain way, and when one piece of that plan doesn't work, the rest of it falls down. They didn't invest in running backs because they planned on having a very good, very skilled, very physical offensive line. So they got Gaskin, who's good, but again, not a high investment back and not a guy who's going to create a ton of yards on his own. He's going to get good yards that are blocked and use a little bit of speed to pop some extra. Salvin Ahmed, the same thing, a lot of speed, some shiftiness, but if he's getting hit in the backfield, he's not a guy that's going to create yards on his own. So they didn't go out and invest heavily in a running back. Organizationally, they said, we're going to put that money into other places, into the corners, into the offensive line, into some of the wide receivers. And then the offensive line collapses, and you don't have any guys that can just kind of make that crazy 35-yard play, breaking 3 tackles on their own. You're getting guys like Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed hitting the backfield, and that is a non-starter. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's not like Javonte Williams, who had a play that we'll talk about later in the game or later in the episode, where it's like he gets hit and it doesn't matter, and then he gets hit again and it doesn't matter, and then he's got 3 guys on him and it doesn't matter because he's getting 10 more yards, and like they didn't block shit, but he's still getting 20 yards on the carry. Like you said, they don't have that guy. 3 down number 2, speaking of bad offenses, I feel like we're just going to keep talking about the Steelers every week because it's a hopeless situation. Like, again, I very easily could have highlighted the Texans here, but I wanted to highlight the Steelers instead because it's not the same as the Texans where like the entire organization is a tire fire. It's one specific thing with the Steelers, and it's a very old, very slow, very, let's just say his arm isn't there.
Yeah.
Type quarterback, and it's holding them back. And I don't want people to blame the offensive line because they say, oh, we can't run the ball and we can't pass protect. You can't run the ball because you're getting 8 in the box every single play. They're doing 1 man, 1 gap every single time. They are flying upfield because they know your only shot is running the ball with Najee Harris. And I'm sorry, I don't care how good of an offensive line you are. If you're out-gapped on every single play because they're dropping dudes down and they don't respect the pass game, you're not going to run the ball anyway. We've seen good offensive lines get completely out-gapped and not be able to run because people don't respect the pass game. In terms of pass protection, they're like top 11 in adjusted sack rate. The offensive line isn't the problem. It's the quarterback. And, when I look at Big Ben, like 23rd among starting quarterbacks in deep ball attempt rate. And his success rate on those deep balls is very low. Like, yeah, he hit one to Deontay Johnson this week, but like that's the fact that we look at that and we say, oh my God, it does exist is a pretty good indicator of where their deep passing game is right now. So they've got nothing. They have no explosive potential. They can't run the ball because nobody respects the pass game at all. Like the whole modern, involve the quarterback in the run game type stuff that so many offenses are leaning on, that's out the window. You can't do that with Big Ben. So it's like, what do you do offensively in this situation? And to me, it's get a new quarterback. Like, I know it's tough to put Ben out to pasture right now, but you got to do it. Like, season's on the line here. You cannot keep dropping games for the sake of Ben's legacy, because right now, Ben's legacy it's worthless. It's not going to win you games.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to. In the meritocracy of the NFL, Big Ben's currency isn't worth anything. And the reason I put them on the 3 down list this week is because they made this bet in the middle of last year. They saw the end of last year. They saw Ben start to fade heavily down the stretch, as many veteran quarterbacks do in the later part of the season. Their arm falls off. They're not able to push the ball down the field. And they had a very good multi-game preview of what this was going to look like. And instead of saying, whoop, it's time, right? We have a lot of loyalty to Ben. Ben's been amazing for this organization. We're gonna sunset him in a very honorable way. They went, nope, we're going to push all these chips into the middle of the table and think we can just run it back, right? That was their strategy. They didn't draft anybody. They didn't get anybody in free agency, and I don't want to hear about Haskins. Like, no, they have no viable option. They have no succession plan. They doubled down on Ben after what they saw last year. They made this bet last year, not this year. They made this bet last year for this year, and they, quite frankly, deserve it at this point. This is not a surprise. This is not like, oh, he got in a motorcycle accident over the summer and now he's hurt. Like, they saw the preview late last year of what this was going to look like. And it happened faster than they thought it might, I would hope, because if they were planning on this, they're just negligent, even more so. But they didn't even hedge their bet, right? They didn't take a little bit of those chips and pull them back and say, well, we're going to draft a guy in the 3rd round, or we're going to go get a free agent. We're going to get in on somebody like Andy Dalton, somebody that, Fitzpatrick, somebody like that, that's going to be able to carry the load if Ben gets hurt, goes down, can't throw, right? That's going to give us a viable option because, again, they're full of skill position players. Their offensive line is talented. And again, given a threat of a pass, again, those meshing of the phases, right? Give Najee some breathing room if you're going to spend a first round pick on him. And again, you take that linchpin and it just snaps within the first, week of the season. He looked terrible in week 1. And it's like, oh, I'm sure there were some people looking at that film that were like, oh man, we put all those chips out there. We're not getting any of them back. Like, this is over. And we don't have anything over here. There is no what's behind door number 2. What's behind door number 2 is the poo-poo platter of the week. You don't have a succession plan at quarterback, and it's going to sink a very talented team. And there's nowhere to turn mid-season unless they do something very un-Steelers like and go all in at the trade deadline for somebody average. And that is so anti-Steelers, Mike Tomlin. Like, I would be stoked, but they have to. Like,
people are
that's
floating
what
a theory.
People
are floating a theory.
Oh yeah,
for the trade deadline. Deshaun Watson.
I don't think the Steelers.
I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying people are.
Oh sure, desperation
it out there
makes some very interesting things happen. I could see them going for mid-level starter backup. I can't see them selling out for Deshaun Watson, given the situation and the Steelers' legacy is kind of an NFL cornerstone franchise. I just don't see them doing that. Like, that seems like a massive short sell, right? You're gonna pour assets to the Texans and you take on a huge liability. That is, boom or bust, huge boom, huge bust potential. I just don't see them doing it.
The pick protections would have to be enormous.
Yeah, and I don't think the Texans have already kind of reached a level of irrationality, at least in the press, about what they're asking for Watson, that they're not gonna say give me less because you're Pittsburgh. Like, they're gonna be give me more because it's Deshaun Watson.
Well, and Pittsburgh is gonna have to say, like, we'll give you all this, but if, not to be too much of a downer, but it's like, if there's an indictment, you get nothing.
But the Texans would never do it. I know they have not approached reality in their demands at all. So I just don't see that as an option. And that leaves you with going after somebody that's got, the one that I heard last week, I don't know, maybe even we floated it, I lose track, was Jimmy G. I think you said it last week.
Yeah, I did.
Like Jimmy G.
But now Jimmy's hurt. So it's like,
well, yeah, but he's not like ACL blown hurt. He's got a calf strain. It's going to keep him out 3 weeks, which strangely enough takes him right about to the trade deadline. So maybe you can buy a little bit low on Jimmy G. Maybe Trey lights it up and they're not so sad to get the locker room unified going in that direction under the rookie. Maybe you get at least a fair value and you don't get soaked because you're so needy, and everybody knows it. Like, every general manager in the NFL knows right now that Pittsburgh is sunk until they get something behind center, and they don't have anything. They don't have any answers there. They're going to struggle and probably come in last in their division if they don't change that. Everybody knows that. Pittsburgh knows that. It's no secret, right? So if you can break even or pay a small premium for a guy like Jimmy G, that again would probably unlock that offense, that seems like the answer. Short of that, what are you gonna do? They don't have anything, and it's not like functional starting quarterbacks are just growing on trees and they can just go out and scrape a couple up in a tryout. It's not going to happen.
You can draft Malik Willis.
Yeah, but that's just cashing the season, and at that point, obviously, you don't trade any assets.
I don't think they're going to have a choice. I think it bends the start of the entire year. They're going to have the pick to get Malik Willis.
I agree, but that's a tough sell on game. Like, we just finished game 4, and it's a 17-game season now. You're going to say, okay, we're for the next 13 games / 14 weeks, you're going to have to be hopeless. Bear with us.
It would be a very new position for Steelers fans to be in, to be rooting for an objectively bad team. Like they've rooted for okay teams. Like I've seen them live. A couple years ago, I went out to the Steelers, to Pittsburgh, to Heinz Field to see them take on the Rams, and their offense was hopeless, but their defense and their special teams were so damn good that they were still an average football team. Like I've seen quote unquote bad Steeler teams before by their standards, but this could be worse. And Steelers fans have not had to deal with that ever in the Mike Tomlin era, an objectively bad football team. So we'll see. We'll see if they make a trade. Again, I'm not saying it's a good idea to trade for Deshaun Watson. No. Lord knows. Again, I, as a Texans fan, am actively saying that's probably a bad idea for a lot of reasons. But I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But on a slightly more positive note, which is saying a lot, 3 down, number 3, furious Fangio. Vic Fangio is heated after playing against the Ravens because they had the audacity to run the ball with 3 seconds left to keep their 100-yard streak alive. Keep in mind, after the Broncos were using timeouts and trying to get a last-second touchdown in complete garbage time when the game was totally out of hand. So a little bit of pot calling the kettle black, whatever the phrase is, of like, oh, they don't care about player safety. They were extending the game longer than they needed to. Yeah, the Broncos kind of were too. I just found it interesting. And the quote that Vic Fangio used said it was kind of bullshit. His words, not mine. But that he expected nothing less from the Ravens because that's what they're about and that they don't care about player safety.
This was wildly disingenuous. Coaches say a lot of things to say my team got disrespected. Fangio went on to say that he has never seen anything like this in his 37 years of coaching in the NFL. To which I say, that's kind of bullshit. That's actually bullshit in its own right. You've seen far worse, Vic. 37 years is a long time in the NFL. You've seen some absolutely bush league crap. And this was not that. And for you to sort of drum up hyperbole and say, oh, I expected this from the Ravens and this is embarrassing. Like, maybe stop the run. Like, and then you don't have to stand up at the podium and say how unsportsmanlike they were. Come on. This isn't like they were cut blocking people. It was pretty much the least impactful run. Like, this is a standing 2-hand touch block. And, Lamar pulls up after 4 yards and kind of goes out of bounds. Like, this was not like, hey, let's go batter some heads and break people and anti-player safety. And for you to kind of try and gin that up into some storm is you being a little bit embarrassed that your defense got gashed for 100 yards and not much else. Like, to stand up there and say this is the worst thing or that the Ravens are bush league for pulling it off. I think most folks that cover the NFL, including Greasy on Monday Night Football, was like, I don't hold anything against the Ravens at all. Like, this is totally fine. This is not a problem. I think is the prevailing wisdom. And this is just a little bit of Vic sort of blowing smoke because he's frankly a little pissed off that his guys got rolled on the ground. That's that.
People were saying that they were comparing it to those Greg Schiano teams where they would like attack the kneel down, and it's like it's not the same thing. That's a kneel down with,
and that was psychotic. That was crazy.
But it's not the same. Like again, as you said, there were no cut blocks. There were no double teams. They were not moving guys with line of scrimmage. It just looked like an escort of 5 bodies in front of Lamar running casually, taking a stroll through the park for 4 yards, and then he just went down. There was barely any contact. Like, are we playing football here? Like, come on. I don't know. It just
the feigned
I
outrage.
love Vic Fangio, but he was just mad. He was just
mad. The feigned outrage was the part that I was like, oh really, Vic? Really? You've never seen anything worse in almost 4 decades in the NFL? You've seen things that could be booked as like outright aggravated assault. Don't tell me that
There were
is
worse
such a
things
terrible
in
thing.
that game. Did you see the hit on Teddy? Like, that's what you can be mad about.
It just felt like I'm embarrassed, and so what I'm gonna do to manifest that is to stand up here and blame the other guy for being what, in the context of professional football, is completely reasonable. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think many people were buying it either. It's football. Come on. Today's episode is sponsored by Mack Weldon. Mack Weldon is a premium men's essentials brand that believes in smart designs and all of the high quality fabrics that make up their daily wear system. The daily wear system is a selection of clothes that are all built to work together in any combination you want, whether it's their breathable t-shirts and polos, or their stylish button-ups and shirts, to, of course, underwear and beyond. Mack Weldon makes it easy for you to dress for work, leisure, or play with staples like their tailored Ace sweatshorts that pair well with their ultra-soft Pima tees, or if you're getting ready to start traveling again like I am, you can use their silver knit polo and radius shorts that are the perfect high-tech but also highly packable combo. And by the way, I have the Ace half zip and I've had it for well over a year now and I still wear it all the time. Could not recommend it enough. It's extremely comfortable and worth every single penny. So if you want to try anything from the Mack Weldon Daily Wear system, you can get 20% off your first order at mackweldon.com/bootleg, promo code bootleg. And again, that will give you 20% off your order. Once more, that is mackweldon.com/bootleg, promo code bootleg. Mack Weldon, radically efficient wardrobing. All right, let's get to three interesting now. These are three teams, games, coaches, players, whatever, that we just found fascinating for any given reason. And three interesting. Number one is Tom Brady's return to Foxborough. We could not go this entire show without talking about it at least a little bit. I'm sure you've heard about it ad nauseum, which is why we didn't put it in three up, because everybody's talked about that game. You don't need another recap of it. You probably watched it yourself. Pretty much everybody watched it. But what I found interesting about that game is we went into it thinking it was going to be an absolute stomp, and it wasn't. It was actually a very competitive game for the entire time. The Patriots defense, I thought, played out of their minds. The special teams, I thought, put on a good performance overall. And Mac Jones was steady Eddie. People criticized him for basically not throwing deep at all in this game. And I don't want to say being a check down Charlie, but it was very much I understand that they have some really talented defensive linemen. Once I hit that back step in my drop, ball's got to be out. And he got the ball out, to his credit, at one point completing 19 passes in a row, that's really impressive for any quarterback, let alone a rookie quarterback. So, people can talk shit about, not going deep and anything like that. But I think that was more of a necessity than just being hamstrung by the offense. Like, this is not, to me, the same as like Andy Dalton having a 4.2 yard average depth of target. It's not the same as, Ben being completely incapable of throwing deep. We know Mac Jones can throw deep if he wants to. It's just the necessity of the game plan and the opponent he was playing. He couldn't. Like, he literally just had to sit there and third step, get the ball out. And he did. He was efficient. He kept them in the game. To be honest, if they went for it on 4th and 3, I think they very easily could have got it and made that last field goal a little bit easier. And they potentially could have won that game solely because of Mac Jones being efficient and just keeping the offense alive and moving. It was a surprisingly competitive and therefore entertaining game to me, and all the credit in the world for Mac Jones for being not the reason they lost.
Mac was a revelation in this game, and it's not because he played an extraordinary football game. He didn't. But I love that we're sitting here comparing Mac Jones to guys like Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's been in the league over a decade. Mac Jones is starting his 4th professional football game. And people are like, but he didn't take advantage of the hurt corners, and he didn't do what Andy Dalton would have done. I'm like, no shit. This guy's a rookie. He's in his 4th start versus the greatest quarterback of all time and a very aggressive defense. Yes, they had, some corner depth problems. He played a really good, solid game. He played within the system. He wasn't the reason they lost. He didn't turn the ball over. He played within himself. He played an extremely steady and therefore, given the circumstances, his fourth professional start against a very good team, a really good game. They're in the game at the very end, which is what you ask any professional quarterback to do, nonetheless, one that started for less than a month in the NFL. In the rain, with all the drama surrounding Tom coming home, Mac Jones not at all swayed by that moment, plays within himself, plays quick, doesn't try and do too much, doesn't lose the game for him. That's a tremendous performance for a guy in his fourth professional start. And yes, he played at Alabama, and you can say what you want about them being professional. He is well prepared. Absolutely. He did great, right? Can he play a lot better as a quarterback? Yeah. Can he play a lot better as a quarterback in that particular situation? No, he really can't, given that it's his fourth professional start. So, I thought that was really interesting. Patriots defense, again, Bill Belichick is the best at defensive game planning. He, better than anybody, knows exactly what Tom can bring. They were, I would say, generally outmatched if you just kind of stack up Tampa's offensive talent and the Patriots defensive talent. And again, they played him to a draw. That's a really impressive coaching job. It's a really, an effort performance by the defense to come through on all those assignments. Really, it turned out to be a worthwhile game to watch, and we didn't think it was going to be. Great thing. Tom gets to come away with the win. Again, fascinating, but man, I couldn't be higher on Mac Jones given all that he had to go through to deliver that performance. He's just going to get better. If he can handle that much smoke, that's about as much smoke as you could throw at somebody in their first month. And he was not flawless, but very, very solid.
I just found the narrative interesting of why didn't he take advantage of their injured corners? Richard Sherman's been on the couch for 6 months.
Yeah.
I get that, but he's not out there throwing a DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. His number one receiver is Jacoby Myers. His best deep threat is, I guess, Nelson Aguilar. Who's he going deep with? Kendrick Bourne? It's not the same kind of receiver talent. I know they have hurt corners, but again, his best receiver in terms of stretching the field is probably Nelson Aguilar, who's above average, I would say, deep threat, but not like a game-breaking one where it's oh my God, if he's one-on-one, we have to take our shot. He's not going to win every time, say, Prime Julio or DK when he's singled up and he's just going, or, Tyreek Hill. It's not the same level of talent. So I'm fine with what they were doing. Yeah. Again, it's not comparable to Dalton and Ben because we know Matt can go deep. He was the most efficient deep ball passer in all of college football last year when he had actual wide receivers. He doesn't have a great receiving core. Even with all the money they've spent, he still doesn't have a great receiving core in New England. He has an okay one, but they're built for that. Being efficient, quick game, being really smart and kind of reading zone coverage and settling in between zones and just getting open and generating completions and moving the offense. That's what they do.
You're talking about matriculating down the field.
Exactly.
No, and people treat it like it was a dome game under the lights. It was freaking pouring. It was soaking. The balls were soaked. The field was slick. Lousiest conditions you can have besides probably blizzard to try and go deep. And people are like, yeah, rookie, whip it up. And you're it's just, there are a lot of factors here. I'm not making excuses. I'm saying despite all those circumstances, a guy in his fourth start played Tom Brady to a stalemate. That's really good. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So solid win for the Patriots because I'm so used to Tom Brady winning being a Patriots game. Solid win for the Bucks Because I do think the Patriots are a better team than people realize, and also a solid moral victory for the Patriots because it was a very emotional night. They hung in there, and they didn't wilt. I think they went blow for blow with the champs and acquitted themselves quite nicely, and I think they proved that they are a real team this year. Like I think I'd probably, in a neutral site game, I'd probably take the Patriots over half the league right now because I think they're a good football team. 3 interesting number 2, somebody who I have no idea what to make of right now is the Tennessee Titans. Because you look at their resume and they played a great team in Arizona and got absolutely crushed. We watched them live against Seattle, another team where we think they're good. We're still not entirely sure what Seattle is yet because, again, they're so streaky. Talked a little bit about that in 3-Up, where it's like they're nothing and then they explode and then they go back to nothing again. So we don't really know what Seattle is, but they got a nail biter win in OT against them. They got a solid win over a not great football team in the Colts. And then they lost in OT to the Jets when they got banged up, and they lost Julio and they lost AJ Brown, and Taylor Lewan's going to be banged up probably this entire season. He'll play some weeks. He might sit out some weeks, but I don't think that knee issue is going away. Caleb Farley was out. Like, it's a banged up team that you would still think would have the advantage over the Jets, but they're still losing that game anyway. So I don't know what to make of them because the best team they played blew them out. They had a couple wins against teams that either we know they're not very good or we're not sure if they're good at all. And then they dropped one to the Jets, who are not a very good team. So how much of this is injuries? How much of it is maybe the Titans are good and maybe they're not good? I honestly can't figure them out.
Now, the reason I included him here is because this is like a betting nightmare, right? What do you do with the Titans? You look at this resume and you say, okay, here's a team that lost its, savant offensive coordinator. He's now the head coach in Atlanta. We didn't know how much that was going to shift what they did or how they did it or how good they were at doing it, right? They come out, play Arizona. We talked about Arizona at the top of the show. Legitimately great team, undefeated, just smashed a Rams team, which everybody figures in the top 5 in the NFL. So, sure, okay, that's a sort of expected loss in week 1. The Seattle game was crazy. I give the Titans a nod in that one because they were on the road. They shouldn't have won that game. They took a couple big shots from Russell Wilson. They came back. They kept running the ball. They stayed with their philosophy. They won the game. Okay, that's a plus. So we got a kind of expected minus and a plus. And then they go to the Colts. And they take care of business. Okay, win the games you should on your schedule. I'll give that a small plus, a little plus, right? A light plus. And then they go to the Jets. Injuries or not, the Jets are a bottom 5 football team in the NFL, and they lose again in OT. So right down the line, but the variance is incredibly small. And if you ask me next week, okay, week 5, I don't care. I don't even know at this point who the Titans are playing because I can't remember. Doesn't matter. You say, so what are you going to bet on the Titans? And my answer is I'm not going near the Titans because I have no idea who they are, what they're going to bring week to week. And I don't think anybody else does either. They're just this sort of...
Oh, God. Oh, God.
You looked it up.
They're playing the Jaguars.
Trap game.
This feels like such a fucking trap.
Yeah, trap game. It's the Admiral Akbar gif. It's a trap. The
Jags are a dumpster fire right now, especially with everything going on with Urban Meyer and all that. This feels like such a fucking trap.
I'm with you. I just don't. Normally, we're like, look, we said in our preseason divisional preview, look, they're a power team put together. They've got a solid plan. Vrabel is coaching a mentality into that team. They've added some firepower. They still have Derrick Henry, who is easily the most productive running back in football. Yeah, they're going to be okay. And I sort of look at this roughly first quarter resume and go, are they? Like, I'm not sure about that. So they're just the sort of biggest question mark going. They could be great. They could level out, hit their stride, and rip off 5 straight wins. I wouldn't be surprised. They could go 2-3 through their next 5 games. I wouldn't be surprised. And I still probably wouldn't know what they're doing. It's just a really strange team at a really strange time for the Titans right now.
Just for people watching at home, their next 5 games: at Jaguars, hosting the Bills, hosting the Chiefs, at Colts, at Rams, and then I'll throw in game number 6, hosting the Saints.
But I could totally see them
I got nothing.
losing to the Jaguars and then rallying under Vrabel and beating the Bills on a sort of, the Bills are expecting to pile drive the Titans because they just lost to the Jaguars, and they come down and give a soft effort and the Titans win. If they lose to the Jaguars and beat the Bills, who are they then? Right? That's the biggest variance you can get. You lost probably you lost to the worst team in the NFL and you beat probably one of the best teams in the NFL. It's just going to go on like that. It feels like a roller coaster for the whole season for Tennessee.
Or like you said, at best they're going 2-3, God forbid 1-4, and then their record is 3-6 halfway through the year, and it's and then who's winning the AFC South? Because it's not like we love every other team in the division.
No,
so
it's just a really weird outcome for the first little bit of games here. This is the kind of thing we kind of usually feel like after week 1 and week 2, but then we get week 3 and week 4, and we're like, nope, that's who they are. Well, we got week 3, week 4 with the Titans. We're still sort of like, who are they? Yeah, it's really odd.
3 interesting number 3. Danny Dimes has become Danny Dollars.
Ooh,
because you look at some of the deep balls he was unloading there against the Saints. I will say this about Danathan Jones. He really throws a pretty deep ball.
Always has.
He's cut down on the turnovers this year so far. Did have the 1 interception yesterday, but I mean, by first couple of years standards of his career, I mean, that's positively improvement. But, throwing for 400 yards, again, stretching the field, hitting Saquon down the boundary, hit a great touchdown to John Ross. He looks a lot better this year. Again, I'm not saying he's completely above reproach. I'm not even saying he's a top 10 quarterback yet, but he looks solid, and he's absolutely not the reason they have a losing record right now. It's kind of everything else around him. They've had a lot of injuries, obviously, with the skill position players. The offensive line has both been banged up and just not very good. The defense has been streaky, we'll call it that. Like, for once, Daniel is not even close to the reason why they lost a few games. Then all of a sudden, the supporting cast around him kind of came together and gelled a little bit and put together a solid performance and allowed him to thrive. And next thing you know, again, he's putting up 400 yards and beating the Saints on the road in overtime. I've seen some really big steps forward from him this year. So much so that if this keeps going, I'm not sure that Joe Judge will survive after the season. I'm not even sure that Dave Gettleman will survive after the season. But I do think there's a shot that maybe Daniel Jones survives after the season if he keeps playing like this, because he's legitimately a better quarterback.
Yeah, this is the mea culpa category for all the crap we've given Danny. And we gave him plenty last year, and he deserved it. He was a turnover machine, and he was the reason that not necessarily that they lost, because it is a team game, but he was certainly one of the reasons they were inconsistent. And if you're going to heap on a guy when he's down, rightfully so, when he rights the ship, you got to say so. And this is us saying so. 28 of 40, 400 yards, 2 TDs, a pick. But 402, I think, is a career high for him over a Saints team that is not one of the worst teams in the NFL. It does have a very talented secondary. And to your point, he has always, in my eyes, that has always been his strength. Give him protection, set him in the pocket, and let him unleash. And he's got an arm. He is a very good deep thrower. It's that, again, he didn't feel the rush. His ball security was terrible. He's putting it on the ground just about as often as he was throwing picks. Like, you give that guy a couple seconds in the pocket, somebody fast he can throw to. Saquon's healthy again. Again, that route down the boundary was super pretty. both before and after the catch. But he's powering this team right now, as much as, as far as they're going to go. But we've definitely stepped on him a lot when he's had his missteps. So when he has a shining day in the sun, we're gonna push him up a little bit and say he deserves it. The big recipient of his big day was free agent acquisition and big play lightning rod show favorite Kenny Golladay. 6 for 116 with a gaudy 19.3 yard average per reception. We talked about explosive plays. That's 20 yards a pop. You threw it to him 6 times, probably going to win the football game. So good for Danny. It's nice to see talented players play well. He's done it more often than not this season, but yesterday or Sunday, yesterday, not used to recording on Monday. Yesterday was his high point, over 400 yards and looking good doing it. So.
Also, the Giants as a whole, people forget, are like 3 plays away from being 3-1. Like it's not a bad team. If they don't jump off sides against Washington, they probably win that game in my eyes. Falcons, it was a 3-point game, very easily winnable game. Yeah, they get blown out by the Broncos. But again, other than that, I mean, you could be looking at a 3-1 football team here that's, challenging Dallas for division leads. So I think this week's game, which ironically is against Dallas, is going to be a very interesting litmus test, because as great as the Cowboys have looked, you can never predict anything in the NFC East, regardless of how good or bad each team is. They always play each other close. And again, this Giants team is not as bad as their record looks. They've got talent. If Danny gets on a roll here, they could pull this one off. I would still bet on the Cowboys to win, but I'm not like all the way in because of how much better the Giants have looked in their record. It's really, really fascinating game.
Yeah, I'm really wary of Daniel Jones heading into face a red hot Trayvon Diggs. And if there's a guy we just need to talk about, regardless of category, Trayvon Diggs deserves a little airtime. He's a guy that has exceeded even my loftiest expectations for his ceiling, and I never thought he was going to be bad. I thought he was going to be a solid, an average to solid corner, and there were much higher grades on him coming out, but I was not one of them. I thought he was going to be a good football player. He's so far past good football player and anything I thought he could have ascended to in his second season, and it's happened. It's happening so fast. He was pretty average last year. He had some flashes, but he really looked like he was learning into being a rookie. He looks like an entirely different player this year and better than he ever looked in college. And that was one of the scouting reports on him, is that he might be a better pro player than college player. That does happen. That's not an uncommon report you hear on guys coming out. Some people thought he had that kind of hidden potential that he hadn't displayed in college. Oh boy. He's playing corner as well as he's a top 5 corner in the league right now. He's up there with Jalen Johnson and all the guys that are just, you don't want to throw at him right now. So that's going to be a tricky day for somebody that's had questionable decision-making issues in the past. If he tries him, Danny might have a much rougher day.
I could very easily make an argument that he is the front runner for defensive player of the year right now.
He's right there.
It's not just the turnovers. It's the fact that it's just hard to throw against. He's not getting tipped balls. He's not lucking into stuff. It's not like, we're just playing zone and I float under the ball when it's thrown deep.
No.
He's playing man coverage and breaking on the ball and picking it off. He's doing shit that not a lot of corners in the league are capable of doing. And right now he is the front runner for defensive player of the year. And I'll tell you what, a year ago, if you told me that was a sentence going to be coming out of my mouth, I would have said you're crazy.
Yeah,
because he had a bunch of PBUs last year. He had some picks, but it seems like every big play he had, he would give up a big play. Well, he cut out the giving up the big plays this year, and now he's just making plays.
And
So
he's playing better, like you said. It's just more consistent. It's not the consistency between variants. Like, yeah, he eliminated the bad plays, but he also took this and pushed it up on a week-to-week level. He's playing out of his mind right now. He's so good. And that's what's really surprising to me is he that's a two-part thing where you're okay, we need to get you sort of more midline consistent, but we're going to take your midline and jack it up like 7 notches, and you're just going to play that way every week. You don't see that kind of leap. People talk about that sophomore jump or, guys really taking the next step. Like, that's a leap. Like, that's a gigantic leap from where he was last year, both in skill and consistency. And it's rare to see it happen that quickly. And it's all clicking for him right now. He's playing such good football.
And it's honestly just a testament to the quality of coaching at the assistant level that's vastly improved this year in Dallas. You go from Nolan last year where, honestly, the defenses openly said that they just didn't like playing for him, to Quinn this year, he's really turned that defense around. The guys love playing for him. They play hard, and clearly he's had an effect on refining Diggs and turning him into inarguably a top 10 corner at this point, and very arguably a top 5 corner at this point. So again, Dan Quinn proven to be a pretty good hire for Dallas so far. With that being said, let's get to, again, my favorite segment of this entire show, the bootleg shot of the week. You guys voted, and the winner from week 3's episode was Sony Michel, with some of the prettiest pass protection you're ever going to see. Absolutely decleating a poor Buccaneers DB coming off the edge. I think it was Ross Cockrell.
It was. He upended Ross Cockrell and put him right on his noggin. That was a great
just
shot.
A hell of a hit. Matt Stafford, I'm sure, thanked him profusely after the game.
Hopefully bought him a steak dinner. That's the kind of thing.
He owed him. So with that being said, I have my shot of Pendleton Midnight here.
Ooh,
got my Canadian whiskey.
Lovely.
What do you got?
I have Kinsale Irish whiskey. They're Black Reserve. It's, I would say it is a good middle of the road Irish whiskey. It is their again aged extra in barrels. Yeah, I like it. Good and solid, and that pass protection was good and solid, so it's a fine match.
Yeah, I just want a Canadian whiskey because it's like taking a shot of maple syrup, and after doing brimstone all night tonight, I feel like I need a little bit of reprieve.
It's definitely going to taste like maple syrup after brimstone. Brimstone is the one bottle story when I was at your house that you were like, smell this, taste this, you were like, taste this. I looked at it and I went, oh yeah, that's yours. Cool. No, cool. You don't have to give me any of that. I'm not actually going to put that in my mouth.
I've never met another human being that actually likes it other than me.
No, I was like, yeah, that's cool. I've smelled it. I can say that I've smelled it. Like, that's as close as I ever need to get to brimstone.
It's just straight up lava.
It's rugged.
So with that being said, cheers to you, Mr. Michel, for winning our bootleg shot of the week for week 3.
Indeed.
Wow, that's fucking water compared to brimstone.
Yeah.
Jesus. I didn't even taste it.
This is my people's water, but it's not water.
Nothing. No chaser, nothing. That is nothing.
I don't need
compared
chaser,
to brimstone.
I definitely felt it.
Oh, man.
All right. So we've got nominees for this week now, and we're going to start it off with a big shot from the Monday night game that we already talked about. Renfro, heads-up play on special teams versus the Chargers. Form tackle hit, dislodged the ball. Most people probably saw it because it was a nationally televised game. It's the only one on. We'll post the link in the clips. The next one, Jeremy Chin of the Panthers. Forced fumble that actually wasn't, but totally still is. We're going to call it Jeremy Chin's robbed fumble. Really good hit. Chin, who was a show favorite during the draft process, lots of speed, lots of size, used both on that hit. Planted the guy, ball came loose. Officials disagreed. We don't disagree. That was a fumble, Jeremy. Nice work. Again, we'll plant that one.
Well, specifically, by the way, the issue was that they said forward progress was stopped, and when they ruled that forward progress is stopped, that's not reviewable. So they couldn't review it to see that there was a fumble. So there was a fumble, and everybody knows there was a fumble, but they couldn't actually review it because for some stupid fucking reason, that's not reviewable. Except when they're challenging a spot on a 3rd down or goal line. And I'm like, why is that a rule? Why can't you just challenge forward progress anytime you want to?
Okay, oddest rule of the week, and probably nobody saw this one because it was NAIA, happened on Saturday. Team attempted the kick. It got blocked. The kicking team dislodged it and recovered it in the end zone, resulting in what they classified as a 1-point safety, because you can't get 2 as if you advance the ball forward. You can only get 1 as if you were kicking it.
So the kicking team had the field goal blocked, and then they were running it back.
No, the other team got it. The other team grabbed it, didn't advance it, I believe got hit, dislodged it. The kicking team ended up covering it up in the end zone. The result, after a very long conference, was a 1-point safety for the kicking team. So they basically get their extra point by another method. Never seen anything like it. The officials looked really confused.
You got to dig deep in the rule book to figure out that
one. That's the one that comes up on the like the referee test. Like, oh yeah, you think you're good? Here, try this. Who gets the ball and what's the points? Anyways, super fun. Back to shots of the week. This one is a personal favorite. John Franklin Myers using Jeff Swaim as one listener put it on Twitter, a human meat shield for the tackle for loss. Basically, defensive lineman takes the poor blocker in front of him, slams him into the running back who just happens to be Derrick Henry and knocks him down. It's a tremendously funny play. I love it to death. Had to make the lineup. Again, we'll put highlights in there. And then a play we referenced earlier in the show, Javonte Williams, running back for the Denver Broncos. Do you remember when I said in our divisional preview, which was the very first one we did, and I said, oh yeah, Javonte Williams is easily RB1 in that backfield. And people came at me in the comments. They're like, they have Melvin Gordon. And I was like, I know. It's okay. He's still RB1. People laughed at me for that. And I'm like, go watch this Javonte Williams run where he gets hit, breaks free, gets hit again, breaks free, has 3 guys jump on his back. Kind of looks like that African safari footage where the wildebeest is going along and 3 hyenas jump up on him. Just runs on for another like 10, almost 15 yards. Like Javonte Williams is RB1 in Denver, if you hadn't noticed. But this was absolutely
not by workload yet, but by talent.
Oh, yes. Like this is very much like the Trey Lance and Justin Fields thing, just the running back version. Like, get him on the field, folks. You know the returns are going to be really good. He's awesome in pass pro as well. Not surprising, given how physical he is running. He is stacking guys up in pass pro, which is typically the gate that rookie running backs struggle getting over to get playing time, because you don't want to get your quarterback killed. And if you're not good in pass pro, you're not going to earn playing time. Javonte Williams is really strong in pass pro, and he can deliver runs like this. Now, Broncos might have some other issues. Maybe he doesn't receive as well as they think he should, whatever. Like, he's a very talented runner. He's not going to get your quarterback killed. Get him on the field, please. So those are the bootleg.
Not to interrupt, but as of this week, the carry split with Gordon and Williams was almost even. 9 carries for Gordon, 7 for Williams. So it's tightening. The workload is tightening.
Just need to take those sliders and shift them a little bit the other way. I'm not saying he should get all the carries. Melvin Gordon's been running very well in his own right. Is a talented runner. He's not Javonte Williams. He should still be getting carries and quite a few. I wouldn't be happy if you, like I said, you just switched that where it was 9 for Williams and 7 for Gordon. I think as he gets more opportunities, he feels like one of those guys that's going to be productive. And look, with young running backs, that's when you use them, right? It's not later on in their lifetimes. You run that tread off the tires when they're fresh. So get them out there. Don't waste that time. But we have 4 nominees this week. We've got Renfro, Jeremy Chin, John Franklin Myers, and Javonte Williams. So go ahead, put the votes in. We'll tally them up next week. We'll drink a shot in somebody's honor, and we'll have 4 or 5 more for you next week as well. There are always a plethora of fun hits, and we love to hear from you. I ended up putting the notification out a little bit late on Twitter, but you all came through. We got like 8 or 9 nominations. Honorable mention to Alec Ogletree's perfect hip toss of the Detroit fullback.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up
after the play. So we really can't put that one in. It looked very much like Khalil Mack, but Khalil Mack did it to Tristan Wirfs last year, which is a whole different classification of a thing. But Alec Ogletree perfectly executed hip toss to the Detroit fullback, that one goes back a little bit. The fullback and he had some words on an earlier block, and he came at Ogletree a little bit late to play, and Ogletree absolutely just flipped him over like a turtle. So good times. You can go check that out, but not an official nominee.
Ogletree's been in the league long enough where it has not the old man strength, but the middle-aged man strength. He's still got a couple years where he gets the old man strength.
Oh, man. I would take a nice career at this point. Yeah, no, good times.
Week 5 watch list. These are the 4 games. We could not just choose 3 this week. These are the 4 games that we're really excited to watch for various reasons. Rams Seahawks kind of speaks for itself. 2 teams that we are desperately trying to figure out, especially the Seahawks. I mean, not that anybody can ever really figure out the Seattle Seahawks, because even the Seahawks can't figure out the Seahawks, but seeing them go up against a very talented, well-coached Rams team, I'm really excited to see that game. I think it's the Thursday night game, if I remember correctly.
It is, and it's in Seattle, so that's a whole different thing. As you have been there, you understand the advantage that building grants, but it's going to be one of those things. McVay trying to bounce back after a loss, a particularly lopsided loss, short week, against a division rival. Like, this is not a nothing game. This is sort of a 2-for-1 game, being a division game. There's just a lot of storylines that intersect, and can they get back to executing? Can Stafford sort of rebound? He typically has in his career. He's had those games where he's had the shaky stretches and the shaky games, but when he was the quarterback for Detroit, he typically came back pretty strong the next game. Gonna be a challenge. Russell Wilson, the Hawks coming off an emotionally charged win at home. Going to be a fascinating game to watch.
We also got Buffalo, Kansas City in a rematch of the AFC Championship from last year. 2 excellent teams in the AFC. Buffalo's on a roll. Kansas City just put up a 40-burger. Pretty big difference from, I would say, the last time these shots already getting to me. Holy shit. Last time these 2 teams met. Only a few minutes left, Brett, in the podcast. You can make it. I got you.
You can totally make it.
The Bills' defense is playing absolutely out of their mind. 2 shutouts in the last 3 weeks. They are just phenomenal at really every level. The Milano hamstring injury, I have not looked for an update since he left the game when I got the notification for it yesterday. I've not looked for an update on how serious that is, but if he's not playing, that is a serious loss for this Bills defense, because he is probably one of their best weapons against RPOs because of how damn good he is at staying in that slant window, but still being able to get in the run fit because he's really, really quick. So that could be a pretty big loss for them. We'll see. Again, I'll monitor the injury reports, but Bills Chiefs should be a great game and probably a playoff preview of some type. 49ers Cardinals. Again, Trey Lance, ideally, this will be his first start. So I definitely want to watch that, especially if he's getting practice reps all week long and they're putting in a game plan, quote unquote, that actually suits him.
Built a game plan for him.
Yeah, go fucking figure. The Cardinals are also, 4-0. Can you tell I've been drinking 106 proof whiskey all night, EJ? The Cardinals are also doing, 4-0. They're absolutely a buzzsaw right now. So that should be a fun game to watch. And then Browns Chargers, 2 extremely fascinating AFC teams. The Chargers are on a roll. They have, at least from what we saw this week, they can win in more than just one way. They don't have to just win with Justin Herbert's arm. They can play defense. They can run the ball. And the Browns, again, they can play defense. They can run the ball, or they can air it out with Baker Mayfield and Odell and all their weapons and everything like that. So 2 very well-coached teams, 2 very talented teams going at it. Really, the the four matchups that we're highlighting here all very easily could be playoff previews. And so I'm super psyched for this week 5 slate.
Yeah, Browns Chargers is going to be particularly fascinating because the Browns defense is playing crazy great. Not any surprise to us. Loaded with athletes. Greedy Williams got a pick last week. Myles Garrett is playing tremendous football. Baker Mayfield had an interesting week last week. He didn't play as well as he can play. He tried to play outside of himself a little bit.
He did have a bad week, yeah.
And Justin Herbert is, clearly a grade above a Baker Mayfield as quarterback. And I feel like this could really come down to how the quarterbacks execute because both defenses are playing really well. The Browns have a ton of other offensive weapons. It really comes down to the signal caller, the trigger puller, whatever you want to say. And if Herbert plays a solid game or even plays as well as he did against the Raiders and Mayfield doesn't really rebound or sort of play within himself, just lean on the running game, which has been very good in Cleveland, like that could be the difference in this game. Also said, if Baker rebounds and goes off, which we've seen him do, he's streaky a little bit in that way, a little bit less consistent, I'll say, than Herbert. Just a fascinating wild card to figure out how Mayfield's going to play. We're going to assume Herbert's going to play at a pretty high level. He's been doing that regularly. Both defenses are great. Going to be a really cool tilt of two AFC teams from, different divisions that both have postseason aspirations for sure.
Before we get out of here, EJ, I know you've got Bears Over Beers coming up. I also want to plug a film room that I have coming out later this week. It's part 2 for the Panthers defense, which has now turned into basically, holy shit, the Cowboys ran all over the Panthers and here's how they did it. Spoiler alert.
Furiously scribbling out your notes. Damn it.
Okay, here's the thing. People are like, Brett, it's your fault. You cursed the Panthers. Yes, you're correct. But in my defense, how my curse worked this week, it manifested itself through Phil Snow and made him put in a completely bullshit game plan that I have zero explanation for, zero rational explanation for. They did stuff that they had not done the entire season. They're playing a whole bunch of, underfronts where they lived in overfronts before. They're playing nickel into 12 and 13 personnel. They gave up 100 yards on 9 carries when they played nickel into 12 and 13. They're playing when they're playing base into 13, they're not boxing the front with their outside linebackers, so they're making corners take on pulling guards, and they're ripping off like 20-yard runs on counter, and they didn't adjust to that the entire game. It was a terrible game plan. So yes, it was my fault, but also it wasn't my fault. And I'll explain that in the film room later this week.
Well, that's good. I can't wait to hear it because the shift from base to nickel against power fronts for runs was like, all right. Like, I'm not sure I would have done that, but then again, I'm not a defensive coordinator. It didn't seem to work very well because the second coming of Ezekiel Elliott was evidenced on Sunday. But Bears Over Beers coming up this week. Again, Bears Over Beers is a preview show we do every week over on Windy City Gridiron for the Bears' upcoming opponent. And this week they are playing the Raiders. So we got a friend of the Bootleg show. Ted Wen is going to show up on Bears Over Beers, which is fantastic. He's agreed to come and preview the Raiders. Nobody better to preview the Raiders. We're super excited to have him. So that show will come out Friday morning. Is also going to be on YouTube. We're doing YouTube this year, which is new for them. Also launched the Bears Over Beers Patreon this week to follow up on the Bootleg Patreon. It's been a big week. So go check it out if you're a Bears fan or a Raiders fan, because Ted's fantastic. You already know that. He's been on Bootleg, but friend of both shows now, which is fun to say. Always great to talk to Ted, one of the best X's and O's guys on Twitter, period. And then we've got a couple of special folks to thank at the end of this Bootleg show that we have not had to do before. And we have executive producers now. So we're going to extend our deepest thanks to our executive producers for Bootleg Football. Murat Khan-Ig, I'm really sorry if I butchered your name. I promise I'll get it right next week. And Konstantin Hausler. So couldn't do it without you. Really appreciate your support. It means a ton to both of us. And with that, we will see you next week.
Yes, again, thank you to Murat. Thank you to Constantine. Again, they're two of our newest patrons who are on the highest tier, so they got executive producer credit. I was shocked that they did that, so I want to also give a personal shout out to you guys. Again, thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed the show that you guys are helping to make possible every single week. Ideally, this is going to come out Wednesday. I'm assuming this is coming out Wednesday. We're recording it. What is it? After midnight on Monday night. So yeah,
it's kind of Tuesday morning now. Yeah,
it's kind of Tuesday morning now. It's like 3:30 a.m. Eastern time. So yeah, it's Tuesday morning, whatever. But so it'll be out Wednesday morning, ideally. But until next Wednesday, when we're going to have next episode out, we hope you guys are having a good week of football. Hope you enjoy Thursday Night Football. Shoot any questions you have our way for this weekend's slate. And we love you all. We'll see you next week. Later.
Cheers.